Welcome to another episode of the Banking on Community Podcast. Today, we're thrilled to have Lyn Graft as our guest. Lynn is the Chief Story Officer at shār, the founder of Storytelling for Entrepreneurs, and the author of the best-selling book, Start with the Story, The Entrepreneur's Guide to Using Story to Grow Your Business. Over the last 18 years, Lynn has filmed and shared the stories of over 1,000 entrepreneurs, produced over 1,000 videos, TV shows, and web series, and worked with clients from CNBC to Microsoft and Dell. Pretty impressive. Lynn has founded 8 companies, raised $10 million in venture funding, and has significant experience in production, startups, high-tech marketing, and business development. Welcome to the Banking on Community Podcast, Lynn.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
I don't even know where to unpack all that. That's a lot of stuff. You've done a lot of things. That's great.
I feel like I've been cloned as many lives as I've had.
That's so amazing. I guess our paths crossed recently with one of our mutual friends I had lunch with, and then she posted something about it after on I think Facebook, and she said, "Nice to meet these two guys and have lunch." And then all of a sudden, you chimed in and said, "Wait a minute, that's our bank." It was cool. That was a great moment.
Yeah, no doubt. No doubt.
So tell us a little bit about shār.
Yeah, shār is pretty much something that I came about randomly. I've been a mentor for a lot of consumer packaged goods, CPGs, our acronym for them, in the Austin community for about 10 years.
Okay.
And about four or 5 years ago, I was at a conference speaking right after my book had come out. And it was one of those things, you got a conference all day, didn't have time to eat, 3 or 4 in the afternoon. And I was leaving and just looking for the exit. And I saw this kind of booth right in the corner. And this guy had some food. It was a trail mix. And I'm like, oh, great. I went right up to him. I'm like, hey, I want to swap you my book for some trail mix because I'm starving. He just kind of laughed. He goes, sure thing. We got to talk, and then quickly found out he was a professional skier and ski instructor. I taught skiing for 4 years. He loves the outdoors. I love the outdoors, and he's telling me about his brand, his product, and I'm eating this trail mix, and I'm going to myself, wow, this is good. He keeps talking. A couple seconds go like, man, this is really good. About 2 minutes into the discussion, I'm like, hey, I got to stop you. What did you put in this freaking trail mix? This is the best trail mix I've ever had in my life. And he goes, well, I'm glad you asked. And he just goes off and starts diving into his backstory and the idea how it came about, and a very long-winded but a great origin story, as we say in the business, about how he came up with the idea, what put him on that path, the arduous process he went through to create it. And I was hooked right away because he was a great guy, salted there from Vermont, 9 siblings type guy, just a really good person. Product was phenomenal. Like I said, best trail mix that I ever had. The brand was really solid for a startup, and I've been around a lot of CPG brands. He just had great names,
which are hard to create a brand in.
Very much
very
so.
Competitive,
especially when you haven't got outside capital. Yeah. You're doing it all yourself.
That's tough.
It looked beautiful, great presentation, solid foundation. But what hooked me, Jeff, I got to say, was his sustainability mission. And he started talking to me about some of the things he had done, being plastic free and all these elements that made it really conservation, earth first ethos, like as we like to say it. And he made this statement to me, and he goes, in our space, most of these brands, they use this single-use plastic, the scourge of the earth. If you go to Whole Foods, everybody's using that. And I'm like, I kind of didn't buy that. I was like, this is Whole Foods. We got the flagship store. I filmed John Mackey before. I mean, they got to have a great selection of plastic-free products. So next week, I went over there, walked the aisles.
Nothing.
It was depressing.
Yeah.
It was flat out just, oh my God, I couldn't believe it. Aisle after aisle. I couldn't find any.
Yeah.
This was 4 or 5 years ago. And I was hooked on everything about the brand, but it was the mission that really struck me at my core. I've been doing sustainability videos for a long time for Dell and other brands. And I just said, I started working with him, consulting with him. A few years went by. During COVID, I was like, I've watched a lot of these brands take off in front of me. I've done videos for them. I've consulted with them. I've become friends with them.
And this has the underpinnings to be one of those.
And that's what. So I approached, his name is Peter Rushford. Yeah. And I said, hey, I want to be part of this. So now we both own the company. And
so you're a chief storyteller for shār. I will admit, I have to keep shār away from me at the bank. Because we do have shār, we do have shār in all of our banks, and I think you have a picture of the tube, what they call the tube here. But you could just go back to the back in the room and fill it up from the big massive jar in the back when you're empty. I can't stop. So I literally just take that thing and just pour it to my mouth. And so they don't let me around share anymore in the bank.
We love that. We want you addicted. We want everybody addicted.
Well, so we touched on in a minute, storyteller. I'd love the story about how you met and what drew you. So tell me a little bit about your journey as an entrepreneur. And I want to unpack that storyteller part of it, because we don't oftentimes associate entrepreneurs sometimes with storytelling. And it sounds like that's a really, really big part of who you are and what you're really, really good at. So tell me about that and how those interact with you, how those two things interact in your current role, in your current work that you do.
You bet.
Long question. Sorry about that.
It's a long answer, so be prepared.
Okay. I'll cut you off.
The genesis in my family, we're great storytellers. We sit around, we cook together. We grew up. I've got 4 sisters.
Where are you from?
New Mexico.
You're from New Mexico?
Santa Fe and Las Cruces. Grew up there. My sisters' names are Cindy, Lindy, Mindy, Wendy.
No kidding.
I'd have been Rindy had I been a girl. Last shot at a boy, the youngest in the family.
Oh my goodness.
And their middle names rhyme as well: Rochelle, Manel, Danelle, and Nell.
Oh my gosh.
That's just kind of an underpinning of
That's pretty cool, Mom and Dad.
Whatever our thing that we're good at storytellers.
That's neat.
We just make each other laugh. So I think I've always had that kind of skill set because I've been around it, and they're all great storytellers. But it really was, after I'd been going down the entrepreneurship track for a while, my first company that I did with Ingrid Vanderbilt, she's my best friend who you mentioned earlier.
Yeah,
you met.
Ingrid's awesome. She's a dynamo.
Just true dynamo. We had done a company together that was a rocket ship, just took off. We raised $7 million, we're on the cover of New York Times, Wall Street Journal, had some great investors with us, great management team, and great customers, State Farm, CBS Sportsline, but we got caught up in the whole .com crash. Yeah. So within a period of time, we lost 6 of our 7 customers. We were still venture funded. So we were then on the paper, USA Today, for crashing so fast within the .com thing. So it was for all the wrong reasons. But
things moved pretty fast back then.
Yeah,
during that period of time.
I don't know, they're fast now. But what it did, it put me on this journey, deciding I want to find something I'm really good at, I can enjoy quite a bit, and I can make money. So I was kind of looking for different things. Did a couple of ventures. One was okay, one failed. Then I had one that gave me a nice little exit, gave me some time to think about things. And as I'm trying to figure out my next thing, Ingrid comes back to me and goes, I want to do this television show about women CEOs raising money in the high-tech space in Texas. And I'm like,
let's be a little more specific.
Yeah, I was like, and I got what she meant.
Yep.
This, we're talking 1990s, 2000s. Mm-hmm. It was all men dominated, chauvinistic type thing. I'd be in the same room with her, and guys she was CEO, as VP of marketing. The investors would look at me when she was talking. It was just one of those situations. It's pretty bad back then. But anyways, I didn't know anything about television, video production.
Thank God it's changed.
Oh, yes. So, well, not as much as we'd like, but it's definitely getting there.
Yeah.
And basically, I didn't know anything about television or video or how to produce a show. But I figured, why not? I got some time. 5 hours a week turned into 10 hours a week. And fast forward, we're looking to figure this thing out. We got this project from the University of Texas, IC Squared, to do this profile piece on her mentor, Dr. George Kosmetsky. Dr. Kosmetsky was one of the first billionaires in Texas. He had 2 PhDs, used to get up every morning at 4:35, fly in his private jet to different places around the country that he'd advise the government, the UT, or his companies. And that was Ingrid's mentor through grad school.
Oh, wow.
And after that. And he was nearing the end of his life. He had some really challenging physical conditions. So we all knew that his time was limited. So this legacy piece was good timing. And it was going to be my first paid video project ever. It's going to be $15,000. Ingrid's going to be on camera talent interviewing Dr. Kosmetsky. And she was very excited. I was like, oh crap. I got to
figure this out now.
So I hired this old director from the Dallas and Dynasty TV shows. And he helped me, got ponytail and everything else, the true director. And we get in there and we're filming. It's going great. And Dr. Kosmetsky says something to Ingrid. He goes, Ingrid, to get a perspective on the legacy I want to leave behind, why don't you interview some of the other mentees that I've had over the year? And Ingrid's like, oh my God, yes, I'd love to. Who are they? First one he said was, Michael Dell from Dell Computers. And second is Red McCombs.
Oh my.
Founder of Clear Channel, now iHeartMedia, owner of the Spurs, owner of Minnesota Vikings. And it was this tremendous opportunity for both Ingrid and I to profile these very successful entrepreneurs. And
That's a neat story.
They couldn't be any more diverse.
Yeah, right. For sure.
You got Michael Dell, who had hid all his computer equipment in his bathtub when his parents came to town, so they didn't know what he was doing. Dr. Kosmetsky, academic, 2 PhDs. Then you had Red McCombs, grew up in Spur, Texas, population of 200 or something. Showed up on campus with 10 cents in his pocket on a bus and became number 247 on the Forbes 400. So for me, it was this opportunity to film very successful founders. All of their stories were mesmerizing. And I caught the bug. I was like, oh my God, I want to do more of this. I want to be around.
So that's what sparked your passion for doing this.
It did.
Yeah.
I didn't know it at the time. I just wanted to do more. I want to be around people like that and capture their stories.
I'm going through that. We talked about that before this. I'm kind of going through that right now with this podcast. We talked about that. Yep. I don't know where it goes, but I really like doing this. It's fun to meet people like you and to hear your story, because it's pretty inspiring when it just gets you out of your own mindset. Like, wow, he did that? Who would have thought? So yeah, I kind of know that a little bit spark of passion, but that sounds like that's your spark of passion.
Be careful. You'll be on television.
Who knows? I don't know about that. I enjoy what I do in the banking business, but this is certainly a fun way to do it. But so you worked with a lot of different clients at this point. You're working with shār. What are some of the unique storytelling challenges or successes that you've encountered in all of these diverse projects that you've been involved with?
Inevitably, one thing that founders struggle with that I help them with on a regular basis, and even at shār, we have so much to talk about, is that you as a founder with all these things going on that you want to tell the world about, it's difficult to condense that into a short format being 10 seconds if you're in an elevator, 30 seconds at the beginning of a startup pitch at a competition, or maybe the first 10 minutes of an hour sit down with a venture capitalist, or maybe a minute you got on the phone with a media person. It's trying to create a very compelling hook and story that will get them to give you that second meeting, to buy from you, to invest in you, whatever that is. That is a big challenge that every founder faces. Like 95% of founders have a difficult time truncating their story to something compelling, or they've just got a lot of different stories they want to share, but they're not sure which one, or should they combine them? Does it matter on the investor? So I always work with founders on that. We do that at shār, and I teach people different techniques and tools and tricks to kind of really condense that. And that's something that I've learned to excel at, because anytime I sit down with a founder, I've got limited time to help them because of my time, their time, whatever. I got to figure out a way to hook them in or hook their audiences into whatever they're talking about. So
that's your special sauce. That's how you differentiate yourself a little bit because I assume you're not the only storyteller out there.
No, there's definitely a lot of storytellers, but I focus specifically on founders.
You do?
Yeah. And there's a reason that it's
they're fascinating people. Founders and builders are fascinating people. Yeah. We have friends over at Brown Advisory, and they have that's kind of their whole hook is founders and builders. They talk about it a lot. Their clients are founders and builders. And we talk about it at Keystone Bank. We love talking to founders and builders and entrepreneurs. They're just a fascinating group of people.
Yep. And
they go through a lot of experiences in a very short period of time because of who they are.
And they have to deal with every aspect of the business, to your point. It doesn't matter. They deal whether it's raising money, hiring, along those lines.
What are some of the more unique techniques or methods that you use to capture and help an entrepreneur tell their story? Like, what if it were like, what would you do with me if after this podcast I said, Lynn, I really need some help being able to tell my story, but I never thought I needed to boil it down in 10 seconds. Like what gets you?
Well, you'll probably love this. Numbers.
Yeah.
It's one of the most powerful tools.
I do love numbers,
being
right?
a bank guy.
And a CPA.
And a CPA. Well, you're a numbers nerd in that sense.
Numbers nerd.
So I was an engineer in my first life, a double E, and I love Excel spreadsheets, and I love black and white, 1s, 0s. That's what really speaks to me. So it took me a while to learn entrepreneurial storytelling because of that. But what I've done is figure out a way to communicate impact, credibility, really demonstrative ideas through numbers. I give an example. So whenever I introduce myself, if I'm in front of a client and I want to talk about my ability as a producer, I say, I've been filming entrepreneurs for the last 18 years, filmed over 1,000, produced 1,200 videos for CNBC, Microsoft, Dell, and then I've also filmed the founders of Starbucks.
I read that and I was like, holy cow. And I read that lead in to it. That I see where you're going from.
So you're taking that's a 13 to 20 word statement, right? And it's a lot of numbers in there. But what that does, it immediately tells you, look, I'm credible.
Yep.
I should be in the room. I should at least be considered. Fit may not be there. You can't tell that from there. But at least you know
part of the conversation.
At least you know I should be talking with you. It's worthy of your time to listen to what I have to say because I've got experience. In the case of, what we have a lot to talk about when it comes to share.
I was going to say, let's talk about share a little bit, and let's talk about what you're doing.
Before we get there, let me answer your question specifically about a bank. So I just I've done 15 videos for military credit union community type thing. And the DCUC, Defense Credit Union Council, what their job is, they're a lobbying organization for all the defense military credit unions across the country.
Got it.
And their job is to be on Capitol Hill and influence and persuade and communicate to them. So we did a what we do video for them. And basically we just tallied up what their impact was. They represent then 23, now 30 million voters, right? So that's a pretty military voters. That's a lot of families, right? So that gets to your attention. Over at the time, 220 billion under assets. Now it's 330 billion under assets. Collectively, all their organizations, 490 billion under management.
Wow.
So that's a lot of capital.
It's a lot of numbers.
And we would use analogies. That's more than Lockheed. That's more than Martin Marietta, all these combined. We would use things like that in telling their story, all with the goal of getting people on Capitol Hill to understand we're an organization you need to spend some time with because we represent voters for you. So in your case, it's really, it kind of goes back to what's the objective? Are you trying to, who's the audience? What's the objective? Are you trying to communicate that, look, we're part of the community? You leverage that whole keystone as being a foundational building block that we do. And the way we do that is, it's anybody can say we have the best customer service, but how many people can say we've got a community room or we do a podcast where we're featuring, I would look for those compelling details that represent your ethos as a brand.
Awesome.
And what makes you unique. So
we're going to go offline and do that.
All right.
I need all the help I can get. I want to talk about share a little bit because we just showed the picture of the tube. We know it's great trail mix. We knew you fell into it accidentally. You're now with the founder. So tell us a lot about how you're trying to build your story around the healthy outdoor brand.
Yes.
Of share. And what's happening with the company? Where's the company going? What's the future look like? Let's unpack that. I'm curious. I want to know more.
So when I met the founder, Peter, he had so much information to share. The first kind of line of order, tactical thing we needed to do was capture all that information so that I could understand what we're working with here. So it was really, it's an exercise I go through with every founder, understanding what are all the key things you want to talk about? What are the things that are compelling? What are things like, let's just brush that under the wind? And it came down to, man, there's a lot going on here. There's a lot of moving parts that are worthy of talking about. So the first thing I kind of focused on, let's work on the origin story and kind of compel that down. And I use a lot of numbers in what we're doing. And it has to do with what we talked about before we showed up. I was telling your marketing partner, Zilker, in here, that we spent 3 years, 52 iterations, 900 hours coming up with the recipe. Then we spent another year trying to source the ingredients from small family-owned organic farmers. So it's GMO-free, gluten-free, grain-free, all the accoutrements of being healthy. And to complement that with some incredible packaging, because we have an earth-first ethos, we decided to go plastic-free into all of our packaging. It's compostable, it's refillable, it's biodegradable. And our mission is to be the most sustainable snack brand on the planet. We make that claim now. And even if we're not, we're very close. We're in the top 5, no question, because as I alluded to earlier, most everybody else is single-use plastic. So what we're looking to do is combine those things and talk about, we don't want to say we taste great, because everybody says they taste great. It doesn't matter if you're food, drink, product, everybody says they taste great. So rather than that, I say things like we spent 3 years, 900 hours, 52 iterations on the recipe. So we invested a lot of blood, sweat, and tears to come up with something that hopefully is going to taste amazing. Then we source from only small family-owned organic farmers. We know all the farmers' phone numbers by heart. We know their names. We buy direct from them. So it's fresh, it's clean, it's healthy. And then we talk about being the most sustainable snack brand without even saying that by saying we're plastic free, refillable, compostable.
So how does it working? How's that storytelling working?
It's coming. It works a lot.
How old's the business?
We just celebrated our 5th birthday this weekend.
5 years old.
5 years old.
And do you have just the impossibly good trail mix?
Yes, we only
have one product.
We're testing a second product right down the street here at Manana. Something called our nut clusters.
Okay.
So we have a really amazing cacao chocolate in there that covers the trail mix, and that's kind of a nut cluster.
So you're sort of expanding now.
Yeah, a little bit. That's just a test waters, but this is our linchpin being the trail mix product,
and it's going well.
Yes.
What's the future look like for sure?
We've been self-funded to date. We're going to be raising capital in the fall. And the next step is we're in Whole Foods. We're kind of a regional brand right now, but 800 doors. That represents kind of how many places you can buy our product physically.
Yeah.
And our next goal is to expand and go from 800 to 3,000 to 5,000 to 10,000. That's kind of the roadmap in our space. You want to be in as many doors as possible.
Is there capital for this?
Oh, yeah.
Is it here in Austin? Where is it? Where's the capital come for something like this?
For something like this, Austin's one of the top CPG meccas in the country.
I keep hearing that.
Yeah, for sure. Top 5. There's over 1,000 CPG companies here.
Isn't that crazy?
So, a lot of angel money for that here in town.
Okay.
There's a lot of alternative financing that you can do as well here in Austin, whether that's debt or financing receivables, crowdsourcing. There's a lot of different ways you can get that capital. But generally, it's most of the capital is coming from the same places that tech is coming. We're looking at Boston, we're looking at Chicago because there's a lot of food companies there, New York, San Francisco, West Coast, things like that, Texas.
It seems like a crowded space, but I guess because you're so unique and you only have one product, maybe all of a sudden it elevates you to the top of the pile because people are like, wow, this is unique. Well, they're not trying to be everything to everybody.
Yeah, definitely. So we like to say that because of our elevated product that we have and our sustainable mission, we're as if Patagonia and Yeti had a kid and it was trail mix. It would be shār.
I love that. So I see what you did there to associate with two really, really cool brands.
Yeah, that you love and you know they're not cheap.
You love and know they're not cheap.
Yep.
That's fantastic. Well, so what does it look like for a capital raise? You said this fall. Is the time good to raise? Do you think the timing is good to raise money?
Definitely, this is a crappy time to raise capital.
That's what I keep hearing.
Consumer packaged goods for sure.
That's what I hear.
Unless you're doing AI or other things. That
seems like that's all. The only thing that's going on in the world is AI and inflation.
Yeah, along those lines.
Yeah.
The good thing about a brand like ours is that we're kind of timeless in that sense. Is that either you're going to like this brand or you won't.
By the way, I told you earlier about how I got addicted to it. My president is very similarly like, I think he'd kill me if we got rid of shār at the bank. Like that's his favorite thing.
I love that guy.
Yeah. Well, so you're going to raise capital. You think the capital is probably maybe here? There's probably some capital here in Austin. There might be some other pockets around the country where there's some centers of influence around CPG type stuff. How much are you going to raise? Do you know?
About $750,000.
Got it.
This would be our seed round.
So a seed round of under $1 million.
Yeah.
Got it.
And we've been approached by a lot of folks over the last 3 years.
But you don't need it. You're self-funded.
Yeah. But now in order to grow the next level, we have to bring in some extra capital.
You're going to bring in a little extra capital.
Because when it comes to consumer packaged goods, there's a lot of physical costs that you got to outlay in order to drive the sales. So it's a spend money to make money type.
Do you make your own stuff or does that outsource? And then is it made right here in Austin, Texas?
It is, yep.
And then what about the packaging?
Packaging we get from 3 different places, mostly from one of the most sustainable packaging companies in America called Elevate out of Chicago.
Out of Chicago?
Yeah.
And has that been really challenging from a supply chain during the last 3 years?
One thing, it's less about the supply chain, even though we encountered challenges like everybody else. It was more about it's expensive, it takes longer, and it's harder to be very sustainable when it comes to packaging and shipping.
Not bad.
It's very, and I'll give you an example. So the tube nobody has a tube, so it's difficult to compare that. It's like apples to oranges, but we have these bags that we ship in 1 ounce, 11 ounce, 1 pound, 2 pound. And one of our bags, let's say it costs 40 cents. That's a compostable bag. You can turn in your home composter, turn dirt in 4 months. If you were to buy the equivalent plastic version of that, it's about 6 or 7 cents. So the economies for that are very different. And that's why the large brands and startups all go to single-use plastic. They don't want the expense of the compostable products.
I have somebody I want to introduce you to that's got a fascinating startup business. You've seen those organic straws when you go to bars and restaurants now that biodegrade and dissolve.
Yeah.
That's what they're doing. But on an even more amazing scale. They've figured out how to use plant-based material to create that. And then they're figuring out now that they can actually create plastic by using the same.
Oh,
I need to introduce you to them.
happy to
They're
meet that
fascinating.
person. We love those
young founding entrepreneur out of Dallas. I just bought building a plant in North Carolina. It's a fabulous story. You'd love to meet him.
that.
You never know how you guys might be able to help each other.
Yeah, and we're trying to. If you look
Plant
at
Switch is the name of the company. You got to meet them. Plant Switch is the name of it.
I go back to our desire is to be the most sustainable snack brand in the world, but also at the same time.
And Plant Switch is a customer of Keystone.
Oh, it is.
Yeah, there you go.
Very good.
So,
do you have Plant Switch in the office?
I'm not sure if we actually have any of it.
Well, we'll have to remedy that.
We're gonna have to fix that.
Yeah.
I think we might.
But the one thing I'll share with you on that is that we are very transparent about where we source all of the packaging and supplies because we want the next generation of CPG companies to follow our lead. We need to be successful to prove that you can go down this path that's harder, longer, more expensive, and still be successful.
So it's not surprising that you wrote a book. Now that we've had a chance to meet and I've learned more about what storytelling is and how you got your start in storytelling. So you started a book, you wrote a book, Start with Story, and it's made quite an impact. Can you share one key takeaway with our listeners that they could implement in their entrepreneurial journey?
You bet. One that I love to share is the rule of three. The rule of three is one of the most important things that I teach entrepreneurs or anybody in business, executive level, people that I coach, mentor, and work with, is that the brain is constantly looking for patterns to shortcut things. The brain is a lazy mechanism. So we want to use as little energy as possible. So when you show a pattern to someone, 3 being the smallest number there is to create a pattern, the brain gravitates towards it. So it's super easy for the brain to get their arms around 3. 2, it's super short. So I want to, if I talk about 4, 5, 6 things, you start losing those things. But you can almost always remember 3. Point in case, the Marines use 3 things whenever they teach all the people that come on board. My buddies in the military always make fun of the Marines because that's the lowest number that they can remember.
That's so funny.
So you take this combination of pattern plus a short number equals memorable. Right? So those 3 things are super important as a founder. When you're sharing your story, think of 3s. What are 3 things that you can talk about? So in our case at Shār, we talk about good for your taste buds, good for your body, and good for the planet. So whenever you're talking to something, attributes about your product, your service, your company, your brand, once it's better to lead with 1, and it's hard for us to just focus on 1. But you don't want to go more than 3 because no one's going to remember it. In an ideal world, you have 1 thing you talk about and the other 2, 3 things are built on that narrative.
The KISS method is what?
Keep it simple and short, stupid. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Isn't that right?
Kisses with 3 S's.
Yeah, that's true. There you go. I like that. That's true. So I'm fascinated. I can't imagine what it must have been like now that I've gotten to know you. Like, what must dinners have been like growing up with you and your family, with the sisters that all have the same names, rhyming, and I think I want to know more about that. That's a really cool family story that really shaped who you are today, and it's fascinating. Sure. Yeah. I love that. I could just picture you and your sisters hanging out, telling the most outlandish stories, or who's trying to outdo somebody else with their story. Well,
one funny thing, being the youngest, right? My sisters, beautiful women. And in fact, I was known as the Graft sisters' brother. Nobody knew my name.
That's so funny.
Everybody, the guys, wanted to get to my sisters, the Graft sisters through me. Uh-huh. My best friend is a woman, and I'm a mama's boy. So it's made me have a proclivity to help women entrepreneurs, and I try to do support in that area.
I think that's awesome. So you're a storyteller, and you've as the founder of the Austin Entrepreneurs Foundation. What's your vision for the Austin entrepreneurial community?
When I remember specifically when Ingrid and I came up with that the idea for that organization years ago, and it was this one thing. We didn't have a lot of time, we didn't have the money, but we had a lot of stock options. They weren't worth any value, but it was like, maybe one day they might be. So I donated mine at the time to Lance Armstrong Foundation, and Ingrid had picked another charity here in town. And then the Austin Entrepreneur Foundation eventually became another entity. But I'll tell you that the way that I was groomed and helped and inspired by was other entrepreneurs. And you'll find when founders come to Austin, they're like, man, everybody's so nice here. Everybody wants to help you. They want to support you. They want to invite you to their events. And to me, that's what I want to continue doing. I want to foster that communal, much like Keystone is really permeated in there.
I agree with that.
Is what can we do to support each other, but also the next generation, and have them do better than we did.
Yeah.
Because if you look at a lot of the things that are happening in the world today, it's because the mistakes that we made, and a lot of them unknowingly. We didn't know all these drinks that were bad for us, that plastic was so bad. It was convenient. It was fast. But yet now we're seeing the repercussions of all those decisions. So if we come in eyes wide open, and that's a lot of what I try and do. I was like, look, I'm one of the few people who will be very honest to you with your story, with your brand and messaging, because most people won't. And I want to tell them specifically, look, you need to work on this, this, and this. You may not like what I have to say, but I'm going to say it to you that you've got spinach in your teeth, or your flies down, or your hair is flying away, because I want them to know. And it's the same way I try to approach all these things. Just know it comes with a loving heart and a way that how can I support you so that you can be successful? And that makes me smile.
That's awesome. I mean, just to think that you could be so impactful to the Austin entrepreneur community because you're a really good storyteller. I mean, who knew? I think that's just a great story.
I didn't start out that way.
I know you didn't, but I mean, that's just awesome.
But I'll tell you this, Jeff, as a founder, there are very few things that you can control. Just the world, the market, your product, development times, access to capital. Yeah. It's all over the place. But the one thing that you have 100% control over, you get to determine who you share it with and how you share it and when you share it is your story.
I think that's
I think it's one of the most powerful assets that we have as founders, is to leverage that, make it compelling, and make it as good as possible, because you're going to use it for the entirety of your company. For the day you come up with the idea to the day you sell it or whatever, you will use it on a daily basis.
I think that's awesome. You've been a great guest on the podcast. I think we're going to have fun talking about this offline.
Oh, excellent!
I want to learn more from you about all of the different people that you've touched in town and seen, and again, we love your product.
Oh, well, thank you very much.
It's fantastic. Like I said, I think my employees would kill me if we didn't have it. Before we finish up, I always ask my guests the same question. As the last question. So if you could point to what is the number one, the most important or impactful investment that you've ever made, what would it be?
Before I get to that, I do want to give a plug for my course, because my marketing guy said I got a course called Create on Storytelling for Entrepreneurs. So if you want to learn more about storytelling, dive into that. Where do we go?
So where do we go to find that?
Are you guys going to have show notes on the bottom of this?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. I'll email it to storytellingforentrepreneurs.com/Lyn_Graft, but much better to remember in the show notes.
Got it.
Okay.
Awesome.
100% in my health.
Yeah.
I have dedicated the last decade towards a hobby investing in health and wellness. My dad passed away 6 or 7 years ago, and I watched him deteriorate in a number of areas from a variety of different conditions he was dealing with. And I had to escort him to his 50th year anniversary or high school reunion. And I'll never forget that moment. I didn't expect to see my dad like that. I didn't see him in a while. I flew to fly him up there to Michigan. And it was just sad, Jeff. It was just like seeing that of a vibrant man who played college athletics and ran his whole life, played softball, taught me athletics. And I was like, I didn't know it at the time, but it planted a seed. I was like, I want to do better. So I spend my time investing, going to biohacking conferences, longevity conferences. I make videos now for a lot of health and wellness professionals for supplements and different modalities. And my feeds from TikTok to Instagram to Facebook are all these health and wellness professionals. And Austin has an amazing community.
And getting more.
Oh, my goodness.
Oh my gosh, the influencers. And I just met another one that's moved here from Pittsburgh. Philadelphia or Pittsburgh.
I don't know. So
Peter, within the last month, and he's got his own health and wellness, and he's an influencer, and and there's a lot of that here.
What's amazing, I've discovered there's so much we can do to improve our own health. For an example, Gary Brecka, he just launched a new program called 10X Your Health, 10X Health, and his tagline is oxygen is the absence of disease, or disease is the absence of oxygen. So he gives you tips on how to work on your breath work. I've been working on my breath work for years, but now the last 3 months I do is exercise every day.
Interesting.
It is incredible. I wake up vibrant, and it's this violent 8-minute exercise of just breathing in 30 times and then hold it and then breathe in again and then repeat that cycle 3 times. And it wakes you up, you feel better, and I'm oxygenating my body.
Well, we're going to live longer if we all do that. I think that's what the doctor ordered. I think I think we're all going to start living longer.
Longer and better. I want to go into my grave, screaming and having a good time.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, I want to thank you so much for coming on the show today, and really enjoyed the conversation. And I want to wish you tons of continued success with sharing all that you do.
And we want to thank Keystone for being a big supporter. We are a customer of yours. And just love having you guys support us and being communal. And that's one of the reasons we went with you. We wanted a community local bank to help us grow so that we could come to the office, get them on the phone, and do things to help us understand their needs. So appreciate that.
It's two-way street. We love our customers and we love the ones that love us. So, and it's been fun. We certainly are proud to be your bank.
Thank you very much. Appreciate
Thanks for coming on. Thanks for joining Banking on Community from Austin, Texas. Today's episode gave you an aha moment. Would you let us know? We'd love to hear from you. You can come into one of our branches and share with us what you loved about today's conversation, or reach out to us on social media. Community banking is about solving problems, not just for customers, but for neighbors. If you know someone in our community that would benefit from this conversation, please share this podcast with them.